No. We're just happy we can remember what we were going to talk about.
From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Masato on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, June the 7th, the year of our Lord, 2017. And now, here they are, still breathing on their own, with a smile on their face, Jim and Rich.
And a song in our hearts as we walk down memory lane to, I think, the way it's starting today. Before we got into this thing, before John turned the machine on in there, we're starting to talk about old-time things. Wally Phillips and old-time radio.
Yeah. But what are we going to talk about as far as today, though?
I have no idea.
Yeah, there's a few things.
Well, you know what? Let's because I glanced at it, and one thing that I saw right away over the weekend, I think one of our favorites from kids growing up watching baseball, Jimmy Pearsall, passed away.
All right. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I have an immediate question. I'm reading the Sun-Times yesterday, and Rick Morrissey did a column on Pearsall, which I was, but then
which is the usual reaction to any Rick Morrissey column.
Yeah, and then I can't remember who did somebody else did another piece on him. But the question I have is Jimmy Pearsall's 100th home run. The legend is that he circled the bases backwards. Now, does that mean that he went from home to third to second to first?
No.
Okay, he ran them backwards.
Now, you do remember who he hit the home run off of?
No.
Dallas Green.
Oh, that's cool. You know what, Jim? I was always under the impression that he had circled the bases, what would that be, clockwise?
Yeah, no, then he would have been called out.
Okay. I always wondered about that because a home run, as long as you touch home plate to the
but you can't go.
And there's nobody else on base.
No, you couldn't do that.
Okay.
You couldn't do that.
So this whole time I didn't realize that he just was running.
He just
backwards.
ran the base. Yeah, he had another one where he had a Beatle wig on.
Yeah, the Beatles wig.
And he was great for stories. He lived near a friend of mine in Wheaton, a couple of townhouses over, and Jimmy was great that if he'd be out for a walk and he'd see you, he'd stop to talk. I think Jimmy's theory was if you have gray in your hair, you must have seen me play.
Yeah.
And last time I saw him, it was several years ago. He was out for a walk, and he was kind of shuffling along. And, you start to feel bad when you see that.
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped to talk, and I asked him, I said, are you and Jan going to Arizona for the winter? He goes, I don't know. He said, I don't drive anymore. I just get in the car when Jan tells me to. I don't,
Wow.
I don't want to be yelled at. I don't want to be yelled at anymore. Yeah. But he started to tell me all his health problems at that point. I think at that point they just diagnosed him with Parkinson's. And he said, I fell down and, I screwed up my ankle. And he said, I had a vein burst in my ankle and shoot blood out all over through my leg. Yeah. And he's telling me all this. And he said, I went to the doctor one day and I said, geez, Doc, since I played Major League Baseball for 20 years, and the worst thing that ever happened to me was I farted. And he got a laugh from me, which is exactly what he was looking for, and smiled and said, good to see you again, and continued on his walk.
I was going to say Billy Williams, I guess, was he and Jimmy were close. I'm assuming they got close when Jimmy was an instructor with the Cubs.
Yeah.
And I guess Billy had just been to see him within the last couple of weeks. And, always, he said, you always, as you just said, got a story from Jimmy. But at that point, Jimmy was in, nursing home.
He was in a nursing home. from what I heard or what I read from a couple of places, they said he was still he was in a nursing home because he was falling down a lot.
Okay.
But they said mentally he was still very sharp. He was always great for stories. I mean, a couple of them that he told tied to a pitcher with the Red Sox, Jim Bagby.
Oh yeah,
Jim Bagby Jr.
Okay.
But it was kind of interesting. I think those, after I looked yesterday and realized Bagby had played for the Red Sox actually 4 years before Pearsall got there. I think these were one of those stories that got passed down through the generations of players, and he put
He put himself into it.
He put himself into it.
That
I mean,
happens.
the story was one of the stories was Bagby was pitching, and Art Passarella was one of the home plate umpire that day. Jim Bagby had a cleft palate, and he had a speech impediment, and he hated reporters because they always ridiculed him
Okay.
for what he did, for the way
he sounded.
the way he sounded. But Pearsall said that he had this first inning against the Yankees, and Passarella was the umpire, and he wasn't getting any breaks, and he was madder than a wet hen when he came into the dugout. And he's down in the dugout, and he's yelling out to the field, Passarella, you think, Passarella, you're the worst umpire in the league. You're awful, Passarella. You're terrible. You think. And Passarella walked over to the dugout, and he said, Bagby, you're done. Get out. And he had to walk from one end of the dugout to the other. And as he passed Pearsall, they looked at him and said, Hey, Pearsall, how the hell did you know it was me?
Yeah, right. You never would have guessed.
And the other story was they were in New York, and I think he said they were staying at the Commodore Hotel. He said, and they had gone out. It was a night game. They had gone out during the day, came back to the hotel, went to the desk to pick up their keys, and the desk clerk apologized. He says, Gentlemen, I'm sorry. The elevator is out of order. The elevators are out of order right now. Unfortunately, you're going to have to walk up. And they're all going, geez, we're on the 40th floor. We're past the 40th floor. And they decided the simplest way to do it is we'll walk up, we'll stop every 10 floors, we'll rest for a couple of minutes, somebody will tell it. Each one of us will have to tell a story. So they get through, they go up a couple of some, they're up to the last one, and it's Bagby's turn. Okay, Jim, tell us a story. I don't want to tell no story. Come on. We all took our turns. It's your turn. You've got to tell a story. I ain't telling no story. Jim, it's your turn. We've all done it. All right. I left the damn key downstairs.
Oh, that's a good story.
And I think the other one that was funny that I heard him tell was when he played for the Mets.
That was very brief.
That was very brief. That was their second year.
Yeah. He was with 3 teams that year.
Yeah. But that was their second year, and he said it's a veteran ball club. He says we're a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
He said, but there are a few kids out there trying to get their break. He said, and I'm sitting in the dugout, and I'm sitting next to Duke Snyder, and I look down at the other end of the dugout, and Casey Stengel, who was a manager, talking about old guys, probably about 73 by then, is sound asleep during the game. He said, and I look, and there's a garbage can. There's a metal garbage can in the dugout that the ground crew used to use to spread sand on wet spots. He says, and I nudged Snyder, and I said, watch Casey. He says, and I picked the top off the garbage can, and I threw it down on the floor of the dugout, and it rattled, and Casey jumped off the bench and started flashing signals.
Oh, jeez.
But God bless Jimmy. He was fun.
Jim, I was thinking after Jimmy died, he's probably the only ball player, athlete. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but he had a movie of his life done prior to his career ever ending.
Really? Yeah.
Because I remember actually seeing it on TV, not at the theater, and I'm thinking, I don't know, it could have been 10, 12. The movie, I'm thinking, when did Pearsall break in? 55 or something?
No, 50 actually.
50? So I bet you the movie was done about
57.
57. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the way the movie looked, and which is an unusual thing.
Yeah.
Usually, your circumstance is not usually such that you would have a film done of you as you're still active.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say for everybody's information, I looked at Jimmy's stats: 104 home runs, 272, I think, lifetime average,
right around there.
1,600 and I want to say 40 some hits.
Probably.
In 17 years, played with 5 different teams, I believe: Red Sox,
Boston,
Indians, Mets,
Senators,
and
Angels.
Actually, the thing that surprised me is that he was with the Angels for parts of 5 years. I didn't think he had been with them that long.
Really?
Yeah.
I glanced. I just saw the teams. I didn't look at the years that he played.
Yeah.
But he was always, obviously, he was one of the part of the probably one of the most entertaining broadcast teams
Definitely.
anybody ever ran across. Yeah.
Harry
Harry would say, Jim, you're crazy today. He said, you're right. I got the papers to prove it.
Yeah. I don't read the by the numbers column that John is it John Grachowski that writes that?
I think that's his name.
But I did glance at it because his column was devoted to Jimmy Pearsall, and I believe that in the column he says that Jimmy Pearsall, and this is using the WAR stat, is the 5th best defensive center fielder of all time. So.
Yeah.
Look over towards the right hand part of the column.
Number 5.
Yeah.
His 15.2 D-WAR trails Andrew Jones, 24.2, Paul Blair, 18.5, Willie Mays, 17.9, and Devon White, 16.1. Prorated for innings played, Pearsall outranks all but Jones.
Mm-hmm.
He was a really, really good defensive outfielder.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at his stats, Jim, not a bad hitter.
Not a bad hitter, no.
If you're as good as he is defensively, and you're a 270 lifetime hitter, you're going to find a lot of clubs that are willing to take you on.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you are nuts. So
I always loved his comments about the movie Fear Strikes Out. He said he was never very positive about Anthony Perkins.
Well, yeah, Anthony Perkins was not a very athletic guy.
No, and I don't think he was very positive about the Carl Malden's portrayal.
That was
of his father.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though. I'll give you useless little fact. Carl Malden's aunt worked for my father at Hammond, Oregon.
Oh.
I tell you're thrilled.
Yeah, well, okay. I'll
file
that one away.
Don't leave home without
it. If I ever have to come up with any Hammond, Oregon stories, I'm going to bring that one out.
There's one I have to find out, though, and I still haven't. We had gone to see a concert at College of DuPage. It was kind of a jazz organ concert.
Slim Whitman?
No. Slim wasn't in town. This was a group called Organissimo, and Hammond organs, B3s, and that. And I started talking to the guy, and because I was impressed with the way the new B3s look compared to the old days, how compact and everything they were. And I told him, I said, my father worked for Hammond Organ started in 1935, worked there for over 30 years. And he said, there is a legend that on some of the generators, the old tone wheel generators, there was somebody who would sign it, and he'd always sign it after he inspected it, named Ziggy. He says, nobody knows who it is. Did your father ever bring that up? I said, no. And I said, unfortunately, my dad's long gone. And I said, anybody who would have been around working with him in those days are gone, too.
Well, I was thinking maybe your father would have ended up to be Ziggy.
I was... I always
You never
he
know.
never brought that. He never brought that
with
up.
The zany Leon sense of humor, it's
might have.
possible.
He might have been Ziggy.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, come on.
So
Hey, Jim's looking at the clock. Okay, we're
all right.
right out of Jimmy
a
Pearsall
couple
stuff.
That was an interesting thing. What are you thinking about? What's going on with our local boys on the north side?
You know what? I think, like I as I said earlier on an early broadcast, it's going to be an up and down ride. I really think, it's interesting. The last time they were home, they showed some signs that they were going to be back on the right track. They went on to the West Coast, and that was obviously anytime you have a no-win trip,
You
it's
go
not,
0 for
not
the
too
trip.
darn good.
Yeah.
And now they're back at home, and they look like they regained their footing. So it's really hard to put your finger on. But if you take a look at the box score, and I would say there might be a couple exceptions, but every one of the starters, including Bryant, is down batting.
Oh yeah,
average-wise.
yeah. That was the discussion on the radio yesterday about everyone right now is really underperforming. You have a couple of good spots. Hayward has kind of come back to earth, but he's hitting the snot.
Yeah,
out of it.
he's
hitting the
the
snot
ball.
out of the ball,
Yeah,
but he's hitting it at people.
Yeah, but it's good to see him hitting the ball. I mean, I'd
Yeah.
say Hayward is playing well, and there's it's not like everybody's playing poorly, but they're just not totally up to snuff at this point. The hope would be, and of course there's no guarantee of this. People will say, oh well, put it this way: when you have as good a team as they have, and you have a 162 game season, I think they will go on some type of a winning streak, maybe a close to 10 gamer or something. But, I would think that would happen. But you know what? There's no guarantee that that's going to happen either.
No, I mean, you brought it up about your experience with softball teams that, we're right there. We're almost there. We're
okay.
just ready to turn the corner.
Yeah,
and
you never turn it.
And you never turn it.
Yeah.
They keep straightening it. That road keeps straight.
Well, you know what? I wish, Jim, that the papers. I know that they have to write this stuff, but I wish they would knock off the fact that Arrieta has lost velocity. Hendricks' velocity has gone up a little bit again, even though he had lost some. He didn't have that much to lose major league wise. But you know what? These guys are going to have to work through. The other thing I'm thinking, I watched a little bit of the Penguins and the Predators last night, and the Penguins didn't look super slow, but I think the Predators, because they didn't go through the whole gamut that the Penguins went through last season, have a little bit more pep in their step, and I think at this point that's making a little bit of a difference. And I people don't realize when you're talking about. In this case, Major League Baseball, the Cubs being the World Series champions. I mean, how many games? Let's put it this way: throughout spring training, even though you are out there performing, but you're talking 162 games. Even if you're not playing, say he rushed you for your Chris Bryant. Maybe you sit 10 games in a 162 game season. So, but you're there. You're part of the team. You're taking batting practice. You're in the dugout. You're involved in the game mentally, and then you take however many postseason games there were, which are even more intense. So, say that's 20 games, 25 games. I don't know what it is.
It can be 7, 14, 21. No, first round is 5, right?
I'm not sure if the first round.
I can't
5
remember.
Yeah.
But it could be as much as 21, 22 games if you have to play in.
Yeah.
If you've got the
it's
wild card
let's
game.
say another 15 to 20 games that are very intense. And, it takes a lot. You've gone all the way to the end of things. And how long does it – I would say this. I think one of the biggest things for the Cubs, not to say they're dogging it because I don't think they are, but to pump yourself back up for, a Monday night game in Milwaukee in May, after you've been to the World Series, Game 7, I think that is not as easy a task as some people would like to make it to be. And I think that's part of the problem. It's part of the problem with any championship team now, other than football. Football, you have a lot less games, and they're more spread out. But
it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes, but for baseball, basketball, and football, I would say it's up here mentally. It's probably a little bit. Look at Cleveland and Golden State. That's got to be a little real grind, especially this is the third time they've met.
Yeah.
In the finals.
Yeah.
So I think you're seeing a little bit of that, and I think Madden during spring training backed off on the pitchers a little bit with that in mind. So I think what maybe they're hoping for, Jim, as we get into the second half of the season, that we will have the gas that we need in the tank to do what we have to do to be back in the playoffs and hopefully the World Series.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I mean, if they don't make the playoffs, this is an extremely disappointing season.
Yeah. It could happen, though.
It
could happen.
It could very easily happen. You have to start to wonder about some of the personnel decisions that were made. You look at them; they seem to be good at the time, but you think back now that at this point a year ago, Jason Hamill was 7-1.
Yeah, 7-1, and I guess those were financial considerations. Hamill and Travis Wood. I don't know about Soler so much. I don't think he was making that much money. But
so, by the way, Soler's in the minors.
Is he in the minors? Okay.
Yeah, he got sent down.
Okay, which is probably not a surprise. He's there's a guy who's is a pretty up and down player. But I just think that I feel better about the Cubs than the last time that we were here 3 weeks ago, and I think they're showing some signs of bouncing back.
During the West Coast trip, I happened to glance at my my Facebook feed one day, and my cousin Billy was, out on the ledge during that.
Mm-hmm.
And I reminded him, I said, we've both seen really bad Cub teams.
Yeah.
I said, this is not a bad Cub team.
Oh, no.
This is just a team that's in a stretch playing bad. And the question is, what are they going to do to right themselves? I think obviously now the Schwarber leading off experiment is done.
That's good.
He batted him 7th. He didn't like it. Madden didn't like it because they were pitching around him.
Mm-hmm.
He put him 9th.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good game. Yesterday, I think he hit him. What did he do? Did he hit him 8th?
Yeah, I think he was. Want to say he was 9th again.
Yeah, he was 9th again. He went 0 for 3 and struck out twice.
Well, here's my amateur recommendation. I would put Schwarber right in the middle of the lineup because one thing that you have to think about is it's a lot easier, in my opinion, to hit with men on base. The pitcher is in a situation where you should have a little bit of a leg up on him when you have runners on. So I'd like to see Schwarber be in positions where he can hit in an advantageous way. And he needs, you know what? One of the great things, one of the things they praise Schwarber about initially, because he's a power hitter, with patience. But I think sometimes to break out, well, you met Dave Rule.
Sure.
Dave Rule,
Sure.
Great player, great
Sure.
softball player.
Yeah.
One year, Dave was struggling, and Dave's style is where it's one where he'll place the ball, he'll put the ball in the alley, and he was struggling. And I'm not saying that I had the magic key to his struggles, but he was asking a lot of people, what should I do? I said, Dave, why don't you just swing the bat hard for a week? Don't worry about where the ball goes. Just make good contact. Swing the bat hard. And he did that, and his slump disappeared. I think what's got to happen with Schwarber is the heck with going deep into the count. If you see a pitch,
hit it.
You got to wail on it.
Take a whack.
Because you know what, you're struggling. You need to get out of it, and instead of don't worry about working the count. You want to get out of it. This is my feeling. You want to get out of this. Now you got to be a little aggressive. Once you start to feel yourself, back in the groove, then revert back to what you did before.
That's a thought.
But that's my thought.
That's a thought. Now the other issue too, is I guess Russell and Baez are going to be on a rotation.
Yeah,
as to their
I have no problem with that. From the manager's point of view, hey, you play this game to win. You're professionals. You're world champions. Everybody's got to understand what you did last year is last year. It's what you're doing this year that's important. So if that's the way, and to me, I have no problem with that. If you're Russell, who's the man who's being demoted, let's say it the way it is, hey, then when you get, when you start to have your at-bats are better, you start to have multi-hit games, you start to knock in runs, then things go back the way they are. You're in control of this, okay? It's not like you're riding the pine permanently. You have a shot. Now you got to do something with the time that you're allotted, and that's the name of the game.
That's the name of the game. I think we saw that how he learned to adapt and be a different ball player when Starlin Castro got demoted.
Yeah,
he had to suddenly say, "What's my purpose here?" And went out, started taking ground balls at second base, and has developed into a pretty doggone good second baseman.
Oh yeah, so he did. I'd say this too, Jim. I think that Addison Russell, if you remember going back to spring training, there's some issues with a sore arm or whatever. There is a possibility that some of these guys. I don't know about Schwarber. I think Schwarber seems to be healthy, but a guy like Russell may be having some physical issues as well, and they may not want to talk about those issues, and it could be having some effect on him as well. So
yeah, and then getting lost among all the stars and everything else, and then there's a guy who's just quietly going about his job and doing it pretty well, is Albert Almora.
Oh well, Almora is very well thought of in the clubhouse. He's an outstanding player. Great base runner, great defensive player, and I would say, just checking the paper today, he's hitting around 270, 275.
I think 276. I looked
276
before we started.
So you know what I would love to see. I thought the original plan before the Schwarber experiment at leadoff was to play John Jay and Albert Almora as a sort of a platoon. And John Jay has been either in the high 290s or over 300 most of the season. I think he's still there. And
always viewed as a good ball player.
Yeah. One of my feelings is, as Schwarber, I feel the same way about Schwarber as I do about Russell. If I was the manager of the Cubs, John Jay and Almora and Hayward would be out there in the outfield, and then you throw in Zobrist and Happ but you know what? Those guys would be in a regular rotation, and Schwarber would have to
find his spots,
find his stroke, and get back in the swing of things.
Yeah, John Jay's hitting 297. Almora's hitting 276.
Yeah. Now, let's say this, too. Those numbers are based on a smaller sample than some of the other players. But I look at it like this. Jay was up like I think at one time in the 340s. Now he's down, but down in the high 290s, and he's been up and back and forth over the 300 line. But you know what? Put the guy who's swinging a good solid bat in the game. You're not losing anything defensively. Both guys are good defensive players.
Both guys are great defensive players.
So I would say put your future center fielder out there in center, Almora. Put your addition over the winter Jay out in left, and your regular right fielder Hayward in right. And then again, they throw Zobrist out there, they throw Happ out there. I mean, that's up to him how they do it. But I'd have those guys playing pretty on a regular basis. Almora and Jay.
You think they're going to deal?
No.
Trade
No.
deadline?
They're not going to deal. I mean, if they deal, it'll be a minor deal.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't deal. I think you got to look down the road and say, you know what? I put it this way: would I love to see them repeat as World Series champions? No doubt. But am I gonna send a guy who's got a long, productive career away just to do that? No. Let's say, let's take the long range view, and we're gonna have to solve some pitching problems down the road because I don't think Jake Arrieta will be here next year.
No, I don't think so.
People are saying Lackey may retire. So you know what? Why give away something for a short-term solution? We have to find a long-term solution for our pitching, and giving away our good players is not going to do it. Besides, right now, if you say, everybody says, well, Kyle Schwarber in the American League, a great DA. Well, you know
Kyle
what?
Schwarber's
a guy
DH.
who's batting 161
Yeah.
is not going to bring back a.
He's not going to bring you back a whole lot.
No.
Let's break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norge and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, June the 7th, the year 2017, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norridge, Illinois. And now back to Armchair Experts with Jim and Rich.
Kyle Schwarber hitting 162 isn't going to bring you much back. And over on the other side of town, Jose Quintana with a 5.68 ERA and a 2.7 or 2-7 record
Yeah,
isn't exactly going to solve your long-term issues down the road.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know that Quintana ever was going to bring, despite what you read in the papers, I don't know that he was ever going to bring the type of prospect that they wanted. Weren't they talking about somebody from Houston at one point?
Yeah.
Some very good prospect. I don't know who it was. I thought you had mentioned it one time.
I think he was an infielder, a third baseman, and I can't. Name escapes me now. I think, if anything, and I'm sure the Sox are going to be dealing as we get towards the trade deadline. I'm looking and thinking Derek Holland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody wants Todd Frazier and his 195 batting average. However, if
it's amazing. Who's calling now?
Who is calling you now?
Well, we could put him on the air. It's Paul Firking. That would be something.
That would be fun. We'll get him another time.
Yeah. No, I would say that Frazier is an interesting guy because there's a lot of production there, and
he's bound to determine he wants to talk to you. By golly,
jeez. Here, we'll just put him on the air. Sorry about this, Ferk. You know what? We're doing a radio show. You want to be on the air here?
No.
I said no. That's okay.
That settled that quickly.
Hey, at least we gave you the respect of answering the phone. What the heck? Listen, I give you a call back when we're done. Thanks, buddy. Okay. Bye-bye.
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Okay, now where were we? I forgot. We were talking about
Frazier.
Frazier.
He's got a phenomenal amount of production for a guy who barely hits 200. Even last year, he had 40 homers. I don't think he ever got past 220.
No, I don't think he ever did either. But I'm looking here. I'm looking at the slash. 195, 306. So it's not much in the way of on base percentage. 396 slugging percentage. I think the only other one you could compare is this guy that's playing for the Padres that basically either
hits a home run or
strikes out.
Schimpf. Yeah. That's you know what though, I think Frazier might have a little bit more value than you give him credit for. He's a good defensive player.
He's a good defensive
guy in the clubhouse.
He's a good guy in the clubhouse all the way. By golly, if it was enough for Hawk to go down and look at him when he fell into the stands.
I wonder though, Jim, the guy that his name never comes up in trade rumors and he's a solid stick and supposed to be a good guy as well as Melky Cabrera.
Yeah.
Now, you would think you might be able to get a little something for Melky, although he might be considered a little bit long in the tooth, but for a contending team, that's usually not a problem.
It might not be bad for a late season pickup. 259.
Yeah,
259 right now.
Thanks, John.
The other one, who's finally maybe doing what everyone expected him to do is Avi Garcia.
Yeah, I mean, did you notice though that came with a little bit of a reduction in weight though?
I noticed.
And he's, there was an article that I had cut out and I didn't save it, and it goes back a month or so, but he just talks about what he's done different at the plate, the discipline, and it was an interesting article. I wish we would add a show right around the time that the article was out, but we didn't. What do you think about? Do you think the Sox, given the right deal, would deal Abreu?
It's interesting. You got to look at, if you get rid of Abreu, if you deal Abreu, you're going to have to want a bunch of prospects back.
Mm.
Who are you going to put at first base? Davidson?
You could put Davidson. You
could put Frazier even.
Yeah, Frazier. My thought would be that there's a guy, though, where you could get some prospects. And my feel, there was one day, Jim, I'm reading the story of the game, and they just trumpeted the fact, Abreu 3 for 4 in the game. Of course, in the 8th or 9th inning, with a runner in scoring position and where the Sox could have tied or gone ahead, of course, he grounded out or grounded into a double play or whatever. And I really, it seems to be the case with Abreu. I mean, his numbers are always going to be pretty darn good, but it seems that when you really need the big hit, that usually is not coming.
Yeah, I'd be curious to dig a little deeper into his numbers to see what is he doing with runners in scoring position, that type of stuff. Because I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you look at one of the numbers that gives you an idea of his production, OPS on base plus slugging, and it's 814. He's a productive hitter.
Mm-hmm.
He's a productive.
Well, he gets on base. He
gets on base enough. Although it's more from the slugging because his on base percentage. Wait a minute, I lost the number. That's not too bad. 335.
Mm-hmm.
335.
Yeah, I think he's everything I read about him. He seems to be a good guy. I don't care for him defensively, especially. They were talking about the game they just had. The other day, I think it was the last game of the Detroit series where Renteria he sort of defended the team. He said we looked a little lethargic. He said we weren't really into the game that much. But there was some blunders. Sanchez had a bad game in the field. I guess Beck made a throw over to first base, and he was charged with the error. But they said Abreu probably should have caught the ball or could have caught the ball, and it's things like that. He's either just not an indifferent fielder or just is not a really good fielder, and I think at that position. That can cost you some some runs and maybe even a game here or there.
Yeah, and it's gotten I think the position itself is more important for being a good fielder now. I was smiling when you were talking about him being an indifferent fielder. There is a Facebook group that's called, I think it's something like the Institute for Baseball Studies. And there have been a couple of pictures and comments posted this week about Dick Stewart.
Oh, well, yeah, talk about an indifferent fielder.
Dick Stewart, his nickname was Dr. Strangeglove.
Yes.
And he played for Boston. Pittsburgh. And I think somebody put a fact up. There was one year he led the league in errors at first base, and he basically played like about 65 games.
Oh, jeez.
At first base and committed 29 errors.
He would have been a great guy for the DH era.
Oh, he was ahead of his time.
I believe that Dick Stewart hit 66 home runs one season in AAA. I think he might have been with the Hollywood Stars at the time.
Something like that. That fact sounds right.
Yeah, and actually, if you look at his hitting stats, my guess is he probably had between 250 and 300 home runs and a productive long ball hitter. I want to say his high for home runs was 42 one year with the Red Sox, possibly.
I was thinking it was more like about 35.
Okay.
I seem to remember that one time.
Yeah.
But he would salute ground balls as they went by.
Yeah, it was, could you imagine, man, you could have a very good hitting team, but if you could ignore all the errors, I'm thinking of guys like Dick Stewart, Dave Kingman, from another era, Smead Jolly, all excellent hitters.
Dick Stewart played in the major leagues from 1958 to 1966 and in 1969. He played 2 years in Japan.
In Japan. Well, yeah, good place for him.
He played 2 years in Japan. Let's see. In 1963, he set a record by committing 29 errors, a major league record for first baseman that still stands. The designated hitter rule would have been perfect for him.
Oh,
Passed away in 2002 at the age of 70. 228 home runs in his career.
228, okay.
228. He also he played in his major league career, he played for the Pirates. He played 2 years for the Red Sox, played for the Phillies, played for the Mets,
okay,
played for the Dodgers, and finished up his career with the Angels.
Oh, okay.
I forgot about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Just made me think of it. We've been going down.
Memory lane a little bit.
Going down memory lane. Couple of things kind of crossed my mind today when I was coming in, and I had seen a news item about this previously, and the guys on the morning show on the Score were talking about Al Pacino has been signed to do a movie about Joe Paterno.
Oh, okay.
And they were trying to speculate on, considering that you had some jail sentences coming down for some of the higher-ups at Penn State. I'm curious as to how they're going to portray Paterno. Or will this just be another thing where Pacino can overact?
Yeah, well, he's good at that. Wasn't he in another sports movie? He was a football coach.
He was a football coach, and they said they kind of thought he's kind of found these HBO has kind of found him for some of these kind of quirky parts.
Okay.
And biopics, because he did Kevorkian, which was supposed to have been a very good movie. I never saw it, but it was an HBO movie, and the other one was Phil Spector.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, those would be good ones for Pacino.
Yeah.
You know what, Jim? If for those people, this whole Paterno thing sort of irks me. I think he got a bad rap, and I would say this: if you want a really even-handed look at his life and his career, and the author does not ignore the whole Sandusky thing. But I think
Joe
Posnanski.
Joe Posnanski.
Very good book about Paterno.
He never really. I did not read the book, but they were discussing it today, and they said they didn't think he did enough on talking about the Sandusky thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just waiting to see if Al Pacino can do the one clip I always hear of Paterno when somebody was trying to interview him, and all you could hear is Paterno going, "I can't hear a word you're saying. I'm having a hard time hearing you."
Yeah. I noticed you turned to basketball there.
I turned to that, and once again, I hear that Jimmy Butler was told in his season-ending interview with management that he's not being dealt, which probably means he is.
Well, they said unless they get an overwhelming...
They're not being shopped. He's not being shopped.
Unless they get an overwhelming offer. You know what I can't figure out, Jim, though? I'm not a super John Paxson fan, but I've seen this quote probably a half a dozen times over the year where Jimmy got mad about something that Paxson said. Supposedly, it was something that Jimmy indicated Jimmy wasn't that important. It's in the article, not Morrissey's, but the other one, the shorter one,
Cowley's?
Right next to it, Cowley's. And Cowley has referred to it more than once during the season. If you could pick that quote out, as I read it, the more I've read it, the more I'm thinking, how is that a disrespectful quote to Jimmy Butler?
Jimmy came away feeling appreciated, and more importantly, he knows he's not being shopped. Is that it?
No, there was one where Paxson, he was mad about something Paxson had said back in February or something like that.
There are very few guys in the NBA who
That's
you
the
build around. This is a team game. You build with players. We are building with Jimmy right now. So why was he upset about that?
Well, that's the way Cowley has played it all year, that was an upsetting quote for Jimmy, supposedly sort of disrespected him. But if Paxson's comment is we're building with Jimmy right now, why is that a problem?
Why is that a problem?
It
Right.
is building with Jimmy and bringing back Wade, because nobody's going to pick Wade up at 23 million.
Yeah,
for
right.
a 35-year-old guard who's got knee problems and leg problems. Rondo, I'm a little bit surprised.
Well, they want him. Jimmy's
Jimmy wants
starting to call the shots to a certain degree, and he wants Rondo. And I tell you what, I think Hoiberg wants Rondo because he doesn't have an answer at point guard.
I think
without Rondo.
I think you're right. I mean, this is a team. When you've got Rondo sitting on the bench, you got a bunch of other point guards on there who can't play the position.
Yeah, that's no doubt about it.
Lopez, liked him.
Yeah, he's very
very good,
very solid player.
Very solid player, very underrated player.
Yeah, I think he is.
As we get close to draft day, which is I want to say the 23rd.
Okay, I'm not sure what.
I haven't looked for any. Well, I think I've looked at a couple of mock drafts, and honestly, I am so disconnected from the college game and everything else. I don't recognize half those names.
Well, I looked at a half a dozen. I'd say a half a dozen of the mock drafts. I don't think any one of them had the Bulls projected to pick the same guy. What basically?
I think I looked at a couple of them too, and they're completely different.
What basically I was surprised at is one. I thought for sure, the mock drafts would focus in on a point guard, but point guard was one of the positions, but also a strong power forward was another, which I was surprised at because it's not been mentioned that much that was a need. And I was just interested that and most of them agreed that power forward. So I'm not saying they're all infallible, but when you have a certain number that agree power forward is a position they need to address, you have to pay some attention to that, I'd say.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the concern here is, especially just glancing at Morrissey's column, is you stand back or you stand pat and bring most of these guys back. Once again, we'll be living in basketball purgatory.
Yeah, but what else are you going to do?
Exactly. That's the problem. That's the problem, and you're stuck with Wade. I assume he will exercise his option. There's nothing, and he really has a good comment here, Morrissey. There's nothing outright terrible about having Butler, Wade, and Rondo on the floor at the same time.
No, I don't think. Well, no, I don't think that's his point at all.
But it can't lead to anything meaningful.
He's making a valid point.
He's making a valid point right there.
This is like this season should be. It's 2 and done, but it's like 1 and done this season because you're not going to have Wade and Rondo back after this, I would assume.
If Wade comes back, he's done after this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if he's done with his career.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think he's.
I don't think he's going to go on anywhere else after this. He's going to take his money, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I just don't. As much as there's been screw ups by Paxson and Foreman at this point, I don't see what else they can do except for to just stay the course and hope for the best in the draft. And what are you going to do? Maybe something will happen as the season progresses. You don't know.
Hope for the best in the draft, and somebody makes you an offer that you just simply can't refuse.
Jim, I just have to say, I don't know what when you just think about. I was one of the things I was thinking about talking about this show is I'm really interested, even though we don't have a team in either of the finals, in the NHL and NBA finals for different reasons. But in the NBA finals, one of the things I'm thinking, Golden State. I mean, Cleveland is a very good team. Golden State is stacked. Okay, when you got Kevin Durant to go with whoever they had before, not whoever they had, but the guys they already had.
Yeah.
I mean, how the heck? I don't care who you are, Cleveland or whoever else. How are you going to beat that? I mean, it's all, and so far nobody has in the playoffs. They have not lost in the playoffs yet. So
no, they haven't. They haven't.
So I guess my question would be, unless you're willing to open your pocketbook and grab a couple of superstars, and there's not that many of those around, to be honest. Let's say this.
John is hoping Derrick Rose would be available.
Yeah, or Derrick Rose may end up in Minnesota.
Oh, him and Tibbs?
Yeah, him and Tibbs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't want to get off on that tangent, but you know what? Here's the thing.
I just wanted to see if John was paying
attention. Why would you not think about maybe here? Okay, this is what I was actually going to say. You had mentioned a few times that there was a potential trade between the Celtics and the Bulls. Right. Jimmy Butler to the Celtics for
there was a draft pick and a couple of rotation players.
Yeah.
And the names were never mentioned, but speculation. There was some speculation with a couple of their rotation players, which would have been nice.
Now, which is good if you have a team that's set to maybe make the next jump up to championship finals level, but the Bulls don't have that. What I'm saying is we need a player who's going to knock your eyeballs out. I mean, the NBA, because of the way it is, one player can be a huge difference. And Jimmy Butler is a excellent player, let's say. I don't think he's the caliber, I'll just say it, he's not the caliber of LeBron James, he's not the caliber of Kevin Durant or Stephen Curry, whoever, then there's probably a few other names that are I can't think off the top of my head that you could probably add. But you need somebody, not just a rotation player.
No.
You
No,
need
you need an impact.
another impact player to
You
go
need
with
an
this
impact
guy.
player.
Because what you're talking about, okay, in your division, in our division, okay, you got Cleveland. LeBron James still going strong, and he's backed up by Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, who are not like at superstar category, but they're up there. Okay, so you have three really strong players, and then you have
more than a guy level approaching player level.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you have then you have your complementary players, and most of those guys are players. Okay.
Yeah.
Going back
Yeah.
to our grading system or the
Yeah.
grading system we use.
Yeah.
Golden State is off the charts when you think
Oh.
about it. I mean, you're talking about probably at least four. Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry are probably, what was the ultimate category?
Player.
Player.
Then you had player, more than a guy,
Okay.
bum.
So you're talking about, you got Curry, Durant, Thompson, Green are all players. And then I don't know the rest of the team that well, but you probably have at least three or four more guys who are players.
Yeah.
And then the other guys are more than a guy, I would think.
Yeah.
So you have to take a look at what you're competing against. So you're going to give away one of your players, Jimmy Butler, to get what? I mean, are we going to get two guys who are more than a guy, and we don't know what the draft
And
choice
you don't
is?
know what your draft choice
Yeah.
is going to be.
And I'll be honest with you, when I look at those draft predictions, I'm like, who the heck are these guys?
Yeah.
I mean, do I really care if I have Alonzo or whatever his name is, Lonzo Ball? I don't even know if I'd want him.
I think, and I wonder if a lot of teams are really going to want him, considering the baggage that he's going to bring.
That's what I'm
with him.
talking about, Jim. Do you really want this guy?
Yeah.
Well, how do you? I mean, the old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. He may be a solid citizen while he's got a high school or a college coach over him. That's sort of, that's their job to ride herd. But you know what? I mean, now you're a pro. You're making more than the guy that you're playing for. What type of guy are you? Are you going to be the guy who's going to be a cancer in the clubhouse? Who knows? To me, probably an excellent talent, but what are you really going to get when you get this guy?
The question, and a lot of people are wondering, he comes out of college after, 15 points, 5 rebounds?
Mm-hmm.
4 assists, 4 or 5 assists.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have to do a lot better
Mm-hmm.
if he's going to come into the NBA, because there's an awful lot of guys that are averaging 15 points and
there's plenty of guys.
4 or 5 assists a game,
Sure.
and have had a lot more experience and can probably take him to school. The game against, what was it, Kentucky? UCLA versus Kentucky?
Yeah, I think they played Kentucky.
I mean, he got schooled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He got schooled.
Yeah.
So this is another one that I question whether this one and done is going to serve this kid any benefit.
Yeah. There's the other thing. One and done. I mean, you could, Jim. It's like when somebody sees a guy in a professional slam dunk, right? Posterizes somebody. I'm like, do you know how many high school kids, if given the right feed and the guy not being totally in defensive position, try to recover, can posterize somebody? And the same thing goes for this guy, this one and done deal. You could be good for 1 year. But based on the stats you gave and the fact that you said that, in the Kentucky game they sort of took him to school, as an NBA general manager, you got to be thinking, what am I really getting here? Is this a guy who's going to take 4 or 5 years to
develop?
Hey, look at a guy like Eric Gordon. I think Eric Gordon is on at least his third team.
Yeah,
okay,
I think
he came
so.
out after 1 year. I think was he at Indiana or whatever.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. he's turned into a really good player. But guess what? The first team that had him, he's not an excellent player for the team that drafted him. Went someplace else after that. I believe Houston's his third team. Now he's started to produce. But I will say this, he's not a starter, which doesn't mean all that much. But you know what?
There's a lot of guys who had a good career coming off the bench.
Yes, I mean he is not starting even at this point. He's coming off the bench, and he's behind. He's coming off the bench because James Harden is there, and I don't know who else they have that starts as a guard. But this is what you have to think. Is this guy when is this guy gonna be able to help us? And are we gonna be able to hang with this guy till he is able to help us?
Yeah, that's the big issue. Cavs versus Warriors. Can they come back?
No,
I don't think so.
there's no way.
I don't think so. Is the series,
Ain't happening.
Is the series going to go back out to the Bay?
Also, what is it? 2-3-2 or 2-2-1-1-1?
I got to remember. I got to look.
I think it's probably 2-3-2.
2-2-1-1-1.
Oh,
Used to
it
be 2-3-2.
Okay. I'd say it's going back out to the Bay. I think Cleveland might have enough to grab one game in Cleveland, but there's no way they're going to beat them. It's just, again, that energy factor. They were down 3-1, Cleveland was, in the last year's finals. Came back, took a lot of energy. They're back. They are back in the finals. But I just don't see them having enough oomph to get over the hump. And, it comes down to like the shootout at the OK Corral.
Yeah.
You got the Earps and Doc Holliday,
Yeah.
who are lawmen and gunfighters against a bunch of ranchers.
Yeah.
Okay, that's almost what it comes down to.
And I mean, you look at it, and I never thought I'd look at the point watching a game with LeBron James, on a team where they would look so incredibly overmatched.
Oh, they're you know what though, Jim?
And I mean, obviously, Golden State stacked the deck.
Yeah,
and God bless, I give them credit.
I mean, who are you supposed to cover?
Yeah,
I mean, if you decide to double somebody or whatever you're going to do,
you leave somebody else.
Somebody's going to kill you.
Somebody else is going to kill you with a shot.
So
and I haven't really I haven't had an opportunity to sit down. Now the games on Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday night, I got to sit and watch this a little more. We were gone all day on Sunday. When I got home, I said, I'm going to turn on the game, and I checked the score on the phone, and I said, well, this game's over.
Oh, yeah. I think the closest they've been was they did get within, 6 points or something in the last game. But basically, as the game's gone on, they've been getting whacked.
Yeah.
So.
And it's always interesting. I have a discussion with somebody periodically when I'm over at the architects doing his books. I've told the guy who says this several times that he needs to go to sports re-education camp. as he said, LeBron James is a bum.
Is what?
Is a bum.
Is a bum.
I don't like LeBron James. Why? Well, he doesn't take over a game. Well, it's the nature of his game. Mm-hmm. I said, when he needs to, he can.
Sure.
He can, but I mean, his nature of the game is more of trying to make it a team game. I said, but he can dominate when he needs to be.
He does.
The question sometimes is LeBron James has disappeared in games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think back to one of the finals with Miami, one of the games. Well, LeBron was like a non-factor. I also brought up the point with him. I said, there's a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
On those legs.
Yeah, that's true.
I said, and you get to this point in the season, there's a lot of minutes been played.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said, and, we think of LeBron, we think, he seems like he's been around only yesterday, but he's 34 years old.
Yeah.
He's 34 years old, I think, right now, isn't he?
I want to say 32.
32 and 14 years. That's it. This is his 14th season. He's 32 years old.
Yeah, even if he's 32, 14 seasons in the NBA, that's a lot of basketball.
Minutes.
And I don't think he's ever been out of action for any length of time that I can think of.
I can't think of anything where he's had any serious injuries.
Right.
I don't, where they put him on the inactive list. I think you may have had some times where it's, well, he's sit for a few games because, minor things.
Yeah, I mean, but never
Or
a
day-to-day,
no major injuries.
LeBron didn't dress, he's day to day.
Yeah,
Yeah. But nothing else.
Well, did you see this thing, Jim? I think it was a couple weeks back where it was Morrissey again. And I know they have to sell papers, but he was on this whole LeBron versus MJ thing. And can't we give LeBron a little love? And I'm like, is this a bit, you know what? Just because okay, if you ask me who's a better player, MJ or LeBron, of course I'm going to go with MJ. I'm prejudiced, of course. Does that mean I can't appreciate LeBron? I mean,
No,
this
I
is
mean,
not
that's
like
this
a
is-
black or white thing.
No.
You could still appreciate
you
the
can-
one, even if you like the other better.
You can appreciate the player for what he did during the time he played. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can go back and say Oscar Robertson.
yeah, right. Oscar.
You can go back and look at Bob Cousy. Mm-hmm. And the way they played. Look at them for their time. Look at them for their era.
Yeah.
And how they played during that time. I didn't hear it, but apparently, I didn't hear what the number was, but apparently there's a book in Vegas who's offered a point spread on the 72-win Bulls versus this year's Golden State Warriors.
Oh, geez.
In a hypothetical game.
That would be an interesting game.
All right. I think we've talked enough. I can't think of anything else. Oh, there was one other thing I want to talk about now that I brought it up.
Go ahead.
Sent you a link on an article. Tom
Tom
Seaver.
Seaver on pitching.
What'd you think of it?
You know what? I got to go back to work and look at it. You know what?
All right, next topic.
Yeah.
That'll be next time we talk
Okay.
about that. Tom basically said, what's the big deal with velocity? Learn how to pitch.
Well, there's no doubt about it.
He
No doubt about it.
said,
Because what would you say, Seaver? Great pitcher, and I'm sure his fastball I know was major league, but not like known as like a Nolan Ryan.
No.
So
No, and I think I think if I remember right, there was some reference in the article that he said, I'm tired of looking at box scores and looking at pitchers, and I see the starting pitcher, the number in the innings pitched is 6.
well, it's you know what, Jim? I hate to say this, but it's actually, to me, it's getting lower and lower. I mean, if the guy goes 5 1/3, 5 2/3, he's a lot of times done now.
Yeah, well, I mean, Butler went 5 2/3 last night.
Yeah.
Again, in the Cub game. We'll talk about that next time. All right, John, we're done.
Good way to kick.
Nice.
There we go, Jim.
Nice segue out.
Yeah, that was good. That was very good.
I just wanted to make sure John was there. All right, we talked a lot. We rambled a lot, which is basically what we do when we get on this thing, but we try to have some fun. So we'll catch y'all in a couple of weeks. Until then, we're Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, June the 7th on Jack FM, 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS FM Norwich, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, June the 6th, the year 2017. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norridge, Illinois. Have a great day, everyone.